I go from not knowing how to play pickleball to becoming a professional pickleball player? The funny thing is, I got thrown into it. And the night before I had to teach my first pickleball clinic, I had to Google how to play. I went from having no interest in the sport to becoming obsessed with figuring it out. And eventually that curiosity took me from an amateur player to competing professionally. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how that happened from the very beginning, the biggest turning points, the mistakes that I made, and what I think made the biggest difference. Before pickleball, tennis was my entire life. I started playing it when I was 10 back in Romania. I played competitively. I ended up in the US on a tennis scholarship to play D1. So by the time I discovered pickleball, I had a pretty good background in racket sports. But that doesn't mean that I loved pickleball right away. It was quite the opposite. I didn't just wake up one day and I was like, oh, I'm going to become a professional pickleball player. No, I was thrown into coaching a pickleball 101 class, so I had to learn the rules myself because this is a sport that I have to teach other people and I have no idea in how it's being played. So the night before, I went on Google and I searched how to play pickleball. And I learned the scoring, I learned the rules, I learned the fundamentals, and even though I was good enough to coach it, I still had no interest in wanting to play it. At that point, I still saw myself as a tennis player. Tennis was my sport. Pickleball was just something that I knew how to coach. I think part of the reason why I was not as interested in pickleball was because I was trying to compare it way too much in tennis. What I would do in tennis, how I would hit a ball in tennis, how I would move in tennis. I was trying to make pickleball fit into the way I understood tennis, and that just doesn't work. The biggest turning point for me was realizing that I had to mentally separate pickleball from tennis. Pickleball is not tennis, it's its own sport. And once I stopped trying to make it tennis and I understand pickleball for what it is, then everything changed. I started getting curious. Why do you hit this shot? Why is the kitchen so important? Why do we reset? Why is it important to slow it down? Why can a player that doesn't necessarily hit the hardest still control the point better? And that's when I started to see the beauty of it. I think curiosity is actually what made me fall in love with the sport. Once I became curious about the sport, I wanted to understand it. Every time I learned something new, I realized that there's something else that I'm still not understanding. And that's what made me want to get better. That's what made me go from not just coaching it, but wanting to play it for myself. And eventually I became passionate about it, and I think curiosity is what keeps the love for the game. Because even now as a professional, there's so many things that I still don't know yet. There's always new things to learn, new strategies, new ways of playing, new opponents, and new ways to improve. And I think that's what keeps the spark alive for me. Now, once I started enjoying playing pickleball, I started playing more. And the more I played, then the more competitive I became. And I realized that I had a lot of natural advantages coming from tennis, such as footwork, hand-eye coordination, the ability to read the ball, and just years of competing. But pickleball was still a completely different sport. I had to learn how to actually play pickleball and not just hit a pickleball. Then I started competing, and this is where everything got real. Because it is one thing to play with your friends or at clinics, and it's another thing to play someone across from you that you're trying to beat. I started playing tournaments, getting more comfortable competing, and realizing what my strengths and weaknesses are. And then the more I competed, I realized that I might actually be pretty good at it. But there's a difference between being good at pickleball and being a professional pickleball player. If I wanted to see how far I can go in this, I had to treat it differently. I couldn't just play whenever I wanted. I had to train, I had to drill, I had to play with better players, I had to work on things I wasn't good at, and most importantly, I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable. This was probably one of the biggest changes. I stopped just playing pickleball and I started training for pickleball. There's a huge difference. I started working on certain parts of my game. I started drilling with intentions. I started watching film. I started working on my recovery and on my physical training. And I started thinking on what I needed to do to become a better competitor. Now, another huge part of my development as a player was surrounding myself with better players, because the more you play better players, then your weaknesses get exposed, and that's how you are going to learn. So for me, losses taught me more than wins did. In December of 2024, I got invited to play the minor league for the 18th team, and we ended up winning that. And after that was the moment where I decided, okay, I want to see how far I can go. So I ended up winning the minor league nationals for the 18 teams, and I was like, ooh, I could maybe compete with the big dogs. And then to think that from the night that I Googled how to play pickleball to now thinking that I could do this, that was like such a different turnout. From then, I think a few months later, I had a video that went viral with my backhand. The kitchen had posted it, and that got me to sign on the PPA tour. That is the moment that I went from playing amateur to being a professional pickleball player. But now, here's the thing that people don't get. Just because you signed on the tour, that doesn't mean you've made it. It's only an opportunity for you to see how far you can go. And here's where everything changed. Now, my life is a lot more complicated than just playing pickleball. I'm a professional athlete, I'm a coach, I'm training, I'm traveling, I'm trying to take care of my body, I'm creating content, I'm trying to have a life outside of the sport because I still want to experience life. So becoming a professional athlete didn't suddenly make everything easy. If anything, it made me realize how much work it actually takes to stay here and keep moving forward. What I learned from going amateur to pro. Lesson number 1, you don't have to know everything. When I started, I didn't know how to play pickleball. I literally went from Googling how to play in order to teach my first clinic. So you don't have to know everything before you start. Lesson number 2, don't try to make pickleball tennis or any other sport. If you're coming from another sport, use that background as an advantage, but don't let it limit you. You have to learn the sport for what it actually is. Lesson number 3, stay curious. I think curiosity is probably one of the biggest reasons I've been able to stay passionate about this. Always ask why. Why does the shot work? Why did I lose that point? What can I do differently? What can I learn from this player? Lesson number 4, play better players. You need to put yourself in situations where you're going to get uncomfortable. That's how you find out what you actually need to improve. Lesson number 5, train with purpose. Don't play for hours. Know what you're trying to improve. And lesson number 6, losing is part of it. If you want to become a professional athlete, you have to get comfortable losing. You are going to lose. You're going to get humbled. You're going to question yourself, and you have to keep going. And when I think about how I went from amateur to pro, it's actually kind of crazy to look back at where I started. I was a tennis player who didn't even want to play pickleball. I was Googling the rules the night before I had to teach a clinic. And now I'm traveling around the country playing professional pickleball. And I think the biggest thing that changed wasn't just my skill, was my mindset. I stopped comparing pickleball to tennis. I became curious. I started wanting to understand the game. And once I fell in love with learning the sport, I wanted to see how good I could actually become. Now I'm a professional. But I don't really look at that as the end of the story. It's actually just the beginning. Now I want to see how far I can take this. How much better can I get? How high can I climb? And what happens if I keep that same curiosity that got me here in the first place? So that's the story of how I went from amateur to professional pickleball player. And if you want to follow the next part of the journey, the training, the tournaments, the wins, the losses, and everything that comes with becoming the best player I can be, then make sure you subscribe, because becoming a pro was just chapter 1.